He was already there before the family even arrived. A man in a black jacket, standing near the back of the cemetery, hands in his pockets. Nobody's idea of who he was supposed to be. I didn't think much of it, not until I saw him again, at a different funeral, for a different man. Then a third, a fourth, always the same jacket, the same silence, the same spot near the back. By the time I'd counted 5, I stopped telling myself it was a coincidence. I started calling it a pattern instead. And patterns, I've learned, always have a reason behind them. It started with my cousin, Jake. He was 43, killed in a car accident. Too young, everyone kept saying, as if saying it enough would make it easier. I remember standing near the back of the cemetery when I noticed him for the first time. A stranger I'd never seen at any family gathering, any birthday, any holiday. He wasn't crying. He wasn't speaking to anyone. He was simply watching, the way you'd watch something you already knew the ending to. When the coffin was finally lowered, he turned around and walked away without a word to anyone. I didn't think about him again for a long time. Not until 8 months later. Jake's best friend, Ryan, died next. A heart attack, sudden and unexplained. I went to that funeral too, mostly out of loyalty to Jake's memory. And there he was again. Same jacket, same spot near the back, staying until the coffin had fully disappeared into the ground before he left. That's strange, I remember thinking to myself. But 2 funerals don't make a pattern. Not really. Then came Matt, then Chris. Different deaths, different circumstances entirely, but always the same man standing quietly at the edge of it all. By the 4th funeral, I wasn't asking myself whether it was a coincidence anymore. I was asking something else entirely. Who was he? I'm a journalist, so curiosity isn't just a personality trait. It's the job description. I started digging into who these men had been to each other. The 4 of them had been friends since high school, it turned out. Same town, same school, the same tight-knit group that never really seemed to grow up or grow apart. Old yearbooks, local newspaper clippings, everything I could find traced back to the same 5 boys. Jake, Ryan, Matt, and Chris. And one more, Daniel, the only one of them still alive. But in one old photograph, tucked between the others, there was a 6th boy. He stood slightly apart from the rest of the group, almost like he didn't quite belong in the frame. I couldn't find his name anywhere. I showed the photograph to Jake's mother, hoping she might recognize the 6th face. She stared at it for a long time, longer than I expected, her expression unreadable. Then she finally said, "That was a long time ago." I asked her who the boy was. She wouldn't answer. And that silence, more than anything she could have said, told me I was on to something real. Eventually, an old classmate gave me the name I'd been looking for. Ethan. He'd been part of the group once, until one summer, something happened that none of them ever talked about again. An accident, apparently, out at an abandoned grain mill on the edge of town. Ethan died there. The police at the time called it exactly that, an accident. The other 5 boys were questioned briefly, and then, just like that, the story disappeared from the local paper entirely. If it really was just an accident, I kept wondering, why did the whole town seem to go quiet the moment I said his name out loud? I went back to the cemetery, hoping to find the man myself this time. Instead, he found me first. I was sitting in my car when someone knocked on the window. It was him. He stood there for a moment before he finally spoke. "You've been asking questions," he said. "Who are you?" I asked, stepping out of the car. He looked toward the cemetery gates instead of answering directly. "Does it matter?" "It does to me." He smiled, just slightly. "You know all 5 of them by now. Then you should stop." "Why?" He looked at me directly for the first time. "Because you're looking in the wrong place." That night, I went through everything I had. Ethan, the mill, the 5 boys who'd been there. And finally, the 6th name I'd been chasing. I found an old article. The headline, simple and cold. "Local teen dies in mill accident." Beside it, a photograph. Ethan. And next to him, a little boy who couldn't have been more than 5 years old. His younger brother, Noah. The family left town not long after the funeral. Noah grew up somewhere else entirely. Married. Had a son of his own. Built what looked from the outside like a completely ordinary life. Then, I looked closer at that old photograph again. The little boy standing beside Ethan, I realized with a chill, was the same man who'd been standing at every single funeral. He agreed to meet me. No lawyers, no conditions. Just the 2 of us in a quiet diner booth. I set the photograph down on the table between us. "You knew them," I said. He didn't answer. "You've been attending their funerals." Still nothing. Then I finally asked the question I'd been afraid to ask out loud. "Did you kill them?" He looked at me for a long moment before he spoke. "I didn't remember them," he said. "For most of my life." His parents had moved away after Ethan died, he explained. They stopped speaking of him entirely, thinking they were protecting a 5-year-old from something too painful to carry. But years later, his own son mentioned an offhand dare, climbing an old bridge with some friends after school. That night, Noah couldn't sleep. The dream started soon after. A fence, dust hanging in still air, a concrete floor, his brother, shouting, 5 boys, running. He went back to the town, found his parents, found the old photograph. And slowly, piece by piece, he remembered being there himself. "Ethan fell," he said quietly. "He was still alive. He asked them to go get help, and they left him there. I was there too. I saw them leave." I asked him what he'd done since he remembered. "I found them," was all he said at first. "Some people carry their mistakes with them their whole lives," he told me. "Some spend every single day pretending they don't. And sometimes, all it takes is reminding them." Daniel was the last of the 5. I tried reaching him. No answer. Ever. I went to his house and found it empty. A week later, I read his obituary in the same paper where I'd first found Ethan's story. At the funeral, Noah stood at the back one final time, watching in silence the way he always had. When everyone else had finally gone, I walked toward him, wanting one last answer. "Don't," was all he said. Then more quietly, looking toward the coffin, "Some things should stay between the people who were actually there." He walked away. I never saw him again after that day. To this day, I honestly don't know exactly how those 5 men died. Maybe every single death really was an accident. Maybe guilt did what Noah himself couldn't bring himself to do. Or maybe he was simply very, very good at making accidents happen. There's only one thing I'm certain of even